I want to show you an instance where a deal can go wrong. This is something that's rare for me. It very rarely happens, but it's just almost funny what's happened on this deal. So I got an inquiry through my website from a small company offering me a stock of some workwear and work boots, couple of pallets mixed, but good brands. So I offered the list out and I got an offer back from a customer, and I made an offer to the workwear company and they agreed it. And so what happened was, I'm going to show you this, exactly what happened. So this was the stock owner who offered me the goods, and this is me. So I've agreed the deal with the stock owner, and I've basically sold the goods to my buyer, all right, and made £400, invoiced him, and got a message today, and he said, look, we're just working out the logistics. Does it need a truck or can it be a man and a van? You know, what kind of place is it and what location, etc. And then he messaged me again and said, look, we can get a man and van there this afternoon. Is that okay? And the reason why is that they wants to inspect the stock first, and then pay, and then load, which is fine, because we do agree that sometimes. No problem with inspecting the stock, and then once they're happy, they transfer the money, and then, you know, we transfer the money to the owner of the stock, the seller of the goods, and then they confirm they've received the money, and then they release the goods to load. So what's happened is that my buyer had sold the goods to his buyer. Okay, so my buyer has sold the goods to his buyer. That's my buyer's buyer. So you've got the stock owner of the goods here. That's me, who's bought the goods from the stock owner. I've sold the goods to my buyer, and he's sold the goods to his buyer, who is my buyer's buyer. Here's the part that gets interesting. My buyer's buyer has sold them on to his buyer. So that now becomes my buyer's buyer's buyer has bought the goods. And guess what? My buyer's buyer's buyer was the guy that was wanting to collect the goods this afternoon. So he wanted to go and inspect the goods, make sure they're all okay, and once he's happy, he will pay. He will pay his buyer will pay my buyer will pay me, and I will pay the stock owner of the goods. Simple. All done fast on a banking app. All right, so that was the plan. So what's happened is we've all been waiting for this buyer to turn up here at the location with his van to inspect the goods. But guess what? He has gone to the stock owner. Hey, hi, Mr. Stock Owner. Fancy doing a deal direct? And my supplier here has messaged me and said, Matt, this guy that's turned up with the van, he's wanting to do a deal direct with me. And I'm saying, well, just hang on a second. All the payments are being done. You'll have the money in 10 minutes. Okay. But what's happened is, because I've been waiting for payment from my buyer here, and he's been waiting for payment from his buyer here, and my buyer's buyer has been waiting for payment from this guy who's been to inspect the goods, he hasn't bothered paying for the goods. He's just sat back while we're all waiting for his money to come to him, and his money to come to him, and his money to come to me. and my money to go to the stock owner, who stood there with this guy in his van, and we're all waiting for the payments to be done, and nothing's happened. So what's happened in the end? My people here, who I've done the deal with, I've agreed the deal, I've agreed the price, I've got their invoice, and they're waiting for payment from me. They've got annoyed and basically done a deal with this guy here, who was arrived to inspect the goods in his van. And they've just done a deal. It's called being backdoored. I've been backdoored, my buyer's been backdoored, and his buyer has been backdoored as well. And the guy who's turned up to inspect the goods has basically thought, well, hang on a second, I'm here with my van. I'm just going to tempt them and make them an offer for the stock. And obviously his offer, it would have been higher than my offer that I've agreed. Of course it will have been, because there was two other guys here trying to get some profit out of the deal. So he's basically agreed it with my supplier. This is very, very rare, okay? Because normally what happens is this buyer will normally not be here. Normally, at worst, there's going to be a chain of 3 people. Very rare there's a 4th. Sometimes there's a 4th, but even if there is, what happens, what needs to really happen at this stage is, and what I actually thought was happening, was that my buyer's buyer, this guy, was sending a pallet delivery, a pallet courier, a pallet company to collect the goods, or a man with a van, not his buyer. I didn't realise that was my buyer's buyer that was going to inspect the stock. All right, I just thought it was my buyer's buyer sending a man with a van, who was just a man with a van, nothing to do with wanting to buy the goods. But as it happens, it was my buyer's buyer, who decided to send his buyer to, let him go and inspect the goods and pay for the goods. So we've all been done. We've all been done over. And this guy has pulled a fast one. He's pulled a stroke, basically. And he's leapfrogged his seller and my buyer and me, and done a deal direct with a stock owner. And I've missed out on 400 quid. That's it. Funny story. You've got to laugh. It's one of them things. It's never happened to me. It can happen. But it just doesn't happen. It's rarely that kind of thing happens these days. And the crazy part is that this guy here, he spoke to his seller on the phone afterwards. He says, I've got the goods in my van and I've done a deal with them direct. And guess what? Cheekily, what he said to this guy here that he was meant to be buying the goods from, let me know if you get any other stock. Oh my God, I couldn't believe he's actually said that. Anyway, I've just thought I'd share this funny story with you guys. It is rare that happens. It's normal just for, sometimes there's 3 people in the chain plus the stock owner. That happens quite often, and that's fine. And then, my buyer will organise a transport, or my buyer's buyer will organise a transport. They might inspect the goods on the day or the day before or whatever, and everyone will get paid before the transport arrives. But here's where it can mess up sometimes. If it's a buyer's buyer who wants to collect the goods in their own vehicle, they've kind of got an opportunity to backdoor us if they wanted to. If they're using a third-party transport company, then probably it doesn't happen. because we can just turn away the transport company, and they are obviously not turning up trying to do a deal with the stock owner. But when it's the actual buyer of the goods, and this guy was the end buyer, this guy was the very end buyer, you see. That's where it all went wrong. It was the end buyer. And he was far, I didn't even know this guy. I just heard from this guy here saying, oh, there's a guy called Eddie turning up with a van to collect the goods. I thought it was just a man with a van. But no, Eddie was his buyer's buyer. All right, his buyer got his buyer to go and inspect the stock and pay for the goods. And this guy has just pulled a fast one and jumped over and backdoored us and done a deal direct with my supplier that offered me the goods, that agreed the deal on email and invoiced me for the goods. Shit happens, guys. Very rare, but it's a funny story as to what's happened. It's a small deal, so I'm not even bothered. I just think it's very funny how it all happened. Yeah. So let me know what you think of that one. It is hilarious, though, to be fair.